Our Joe Paris was there at NIFC, inside NIFC, as the president got to tour the facilities. Joe, walk us through what happened on the inside.
Yeah, and actually I can tell you, I believe the president is actually just wrapping up in the building behind me right now. A short time ago, they cleared out the national and local press pool. The national press pool is headed over back to Air Force One area. Of course, the local press pool, they said you're free to go. So we won't be going back to California with them, of course. But the president was just, the last we saw him right before we left, he was speaking with Governor Brad Little as well as some NIFC officials. And they're actually just walking the governor through some of the equipment that the wildland firefighters use. A few minutes before that, they actually took the president out onto the tarmac to show him some of the firefighter vehicles that they use out on wildland firefighters. Of course, they're not the fire trucks that look like the normal fire trucks you may see around the city of Boise, but the ones out that you may see in the foothills. They're built to do a lot of different jobs, and some of the hot shots, the smoke jumpers, were out on the tarmac talking to the president about what they do with the fire trucks and how they're different. The entire thing kind of flew by, to be honest, to me. We got here pretty early this morning and we went through some security checkpoints. I know that I'm pointing to an area you can't see off camera, but the security checkpoints, as I know we reported, had a lot of people here. I've heard a lot of different estimates of how many people were actually here. And to be frank, most of them were here to criticize the president. I've heard anywhere from several hundred to several thousand. When I drove here early this morning, it looked like maybe several hundred, but I understand a lot of people started coming in after I got inside. Now, after the press pool was actually put into a secure location, we waited and watched as Air Force One came down and landed, and of course it taxied, which was a lot of excitement for the people here. A lot of people had their phones out taking pictures to see Air Force One landing at the Boise airport, something we haven't seen in quite some time. From there, though, we did see a press briefing with some NIFC leaders as well as the president. Sitting right next to him was Governor Brad Little. They talked a lot about climate change. They talked a lot about wildfires and really the damage that has been done attributed to climate change. There's been a lot of questions over the last several weeks as what is the Biden administration going to propose on their climate initiative on fighting back against these wildfires. So we heard some ideas from the president this afternoon. We'll get into some of the details on that later in our newscast. Something that I found interesting, though, as Governor Little was talking to the president about his thoughts on wildland management and wildfires and kind of what we see here in the state of Idaho, President Biden was taking notes. He was writing down the thoughts that Governor Little was sharing with him. So it'll be interesting to see when we do get to a plan of action if any of the insight from Governor Little is included in that plan. Something I also wanted to touch on, a fun little story. I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet. The president was talking about the state of Idaho. He thought it was a beautiful place, and he said that as a young man, he actually thought about moving to the state of Idaho because of how beautiful and great it is out on this side of the country. He said that he actually even had a job interview with Boise Cascade. Clearly that didn't work out for him, but he did go on to be the United States president. So one thing leads to another thing. Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind. They kind of moved the press pool in and out, but we were mixed in with the national press as they were watching. We saw all their high-tech gear, a lot of the stuff that frankly we don't have on the local news department, but a lot of stuff going on inside of NIFC this afternoon. We're going to break it all down this afternoon. Again, from what I understand, they are wrapping up inside of NIFC as the national press pool actually heads back to their area, and they're going to head to California next. Now, the trip to California actually is going to touch on wildfires as well as wildfire management and climate change, but of note, Governor Gavin Newsom of the state of California, he's in a recall election right now, and there's early voting, but the actual recall election is tomorrow. So President Biden will be in California this afternoon and evening, I believe in Long Beach, to support Governor Gavin Newsom. From there, though, after a late night supporting him, the president, I should say, President Biden will head to Denver, Colorado tomorrow, where I believe he's going to have some similar conversations with local and state leaders there about wildfires in the West and wildfire management. Of course, something that we do need to point out, the president comes to the state of Idaho 6 days after the state of Idaho declared crisis standards of care up in North Idaho. Of note, the president did not mention COVID. COVID never come up a single time. The reporters here, local and national, there wasn't an opportunity to ask any questions in a formal setting, or maybe what you've seen on national TV where you have the reporters yelling at the president, hoping he hears something and he responds. No opportunities like that. This was all about wildfire management today, NIFC, the president being very thankful to wildland firefighters. So let's see, Kim and Doug, to be honest, I'm kind of just going off the top of my head here. Any questions I didn't touch on that you guys were wondering about?
How close were you able to get to the president? How far apart did they keep you, the press pool, and the president?
Yeah, I don't know if this is specifically for today's event or this is how they've been doing it recently, but we were kept pretty far back from the president. The closest I got to him and as close as the press pool got to him was, I don't know, probably 8 to 10 feet. We were standing pretty far back. Everyone was masked. We were told in advance of the event that everyone was expected to wear masks. And we saw that here today. Even outside, we saw everybody wearing their masks. But you'll see in some of the pictures I got that we're hopefully going to have on television later, or you can check out on Twitter. We got pretty close to President Biden. I mean, we could make eye contact and we can really hear what he was saying. But in terms of getting right up close and personal, maybe ask a question, we never got that close, Kim.
And Joe, did you have a chance to talk to Governor Brad Little, who was also in the press briefing at that time? Or if not talking to him, maybe you could recap a little bit of what the governor's message was to the president.
Yeah, so the governor was really alongside President Biden the entire time that I was able to see them. So we didn't get an opportunity to chat with Governor Little. I kind of gave him a wave, and I think he saw some of the local members of the press pool here. I do want to say I did talk to some elected officials, some Idaho lawmakers, all Democrats here today, members of the House and the Senate. I spoke with Senator Janie Ward Ingalking just a few minutes ago, actually, right before we got on air here. And she told me that she and some other Democrats were able to sit down very, very briefly with the president and just exchange some words. It sounded like they too were not able to really have a full conversation with him as the president's very busy as he's learning about wildfire and wildfire management today. Off the top of my head, I think I probably saw 8 to 10 lawmakers, state lawmakers that were here today. In terms of what Governor Little was talking about, as Doug talked about a moment ago, Governor Little talked a lot about the same things that the president touched on, the NIFC people touched on here, is that wildfires in the West, wildfire management in the West is a crucial battle. And I think the president said that last year there was almost $100 billion in damage because of wildfires. So it's something that we need to do here. Something that I thought was interesting and I saw Governor Little kind of nod his head to is that President Biden said that this isn't a Democrat or Republican issue when talking about climate change. He says that this is a weather problem and we have to do something to fix the climate. I saw a lot of nodding heads. Again, that doesn't mean that anyone agrees necessarily. I can just tell you what I saw people doing. But yeah, really the focus was on wildfires, wildfire management. Aside from a few anecdotes that the president told, I don't think we really touched on any other political topics here today. And
Joe, you mentioned that you're outside NIFC now and the press pools have been kind of broken up at this point. The president has been on time today, very much on time, even a little bit early. And he is scheduled to leave in 15 minutes from now. Any sign of movement from him leaving NIFC, or are you on the other side of the building from the tarmac now?
So where I'm at right now, actually, I can't really see much. I could actually kind of get behind the camera. I'm going to kind of point. If you see my finger here, behind that building, that's the tarmac to the Boise airport. So that's kind of where a lot of the action is going, just behind that building. Air Force One itself is all the way on the other side of where we are, closer to the Boise airport side. If you were to go towards Gowan from where we are at NIFC, honestly, I can't really see anything from here, Doug. The last thing I'd be able to see would be the plane leaving Boise. But I can tell you, as I started to walk over here away from the building, the national press was starting to load into the press vans they have to kind of shuttle them back to Air Force One. I'm under the impression that the president is the last person to get on Air Force, not the last person, but one of the last people to get on Air Force One. They'll do the security checks, make sure everything's good to go. Then they'll bring the president on, and then they'll take off to California. One thing that I thought was super interesting is we were inside the NIFC building, and the regular NIFC staff here is watching their monitors, doing their job. They have a huge computer monitor that's it's hooked up to some flight tracking software. So we were able to watch as Air Force One was coming into the Boise airspace and getting closer and closer. And it was funny because you mentioned he was earlier. I looked down at my watch and I saw where Air Force One was on the radar, and I thought he looks a lot closer than 5 minutes away or 6 minutes away. And sure enough, I hear some of the NIFC crew starting to get excited. We look outside. There's Air Force One, nice and early. So I guess I could have, if I understood how to read radars, Doug, I guess I could have told you that the president was running early today. But it was kind of a funny thing where, is Air Force One always on time? The answer is yes, because you are on Air Force One's time. Now, I'm told the president, he isn't always on time according to Secret Service, but I'm told that Air Force One is always on time.
Because that is the only time that matters at that point. That's pretty cool, Jim.
Right, yeah. If they tell you Air Force One is landing at 1 o'clock and it lands at 1:01, they'll tell you, well, we were actually supposed to land at 1:01.
Yeah, they landed at what? It was 11:40-ish, and then they taxied over to the tarmac by 11:50, and then had the stairs up to Air Force One for the president to come down. And according to the schedule, he was supposed to arrive at 11:50. So It was a little bit early.
A little bit on time.
Early.
Yeah,
a little bit on
A
time.
little bit on time.
He was. It's always on time.
It's always on time. What's that, Joe? Go ahead.
I've got one side story. I could share real quickly if we have a moment.
We have
I know
time.
that you guys, I just heard when I dialed into the station that, okay, we have time, good. I saw that there's been a lot of chatter about Mayor McLean and the gift she had for President Biden. I actually was standing right next to her and chatted with her very briefly, and I saw the painting. It's a gorgeous little painting, and I know there's been a lot made about it on social media, and I know the national press was also really interested in what's going on. You may hear sirens through my microphone. I'm going to tell you ahead of time that I don't know what that is. I know sometimes when we hear sirens, that means a lot of action may be going on behind us, but not now. I just want to say, though, that the mayor also had a handwritten letter or a letter to the president, and I just thought it was interesting that it's addressed to the president, and it's just on top of the really nice painting that was done. And I joked with Secret Service that obviously you say the president, you wouldn't just write Joe like I would if she was giving something to me.
You do have that in common with the president, Joe.
We are name buddies, yeah.
Your name buddies. Yeah, that painting was of the foothills, I believe, and I did see it on social media. If you want to see what the picture looks like, you folks at home, you can go to Mayor McLean's Twitter page and see what it looks like, or her Facebook page probably too.
My apologies, I'm having trouble with my earpiece, so I didn't get to hear the last thing that Joe said, so that's why I'm not chiming in on that conversation. My apologies, but the painting is, from what we saw, very beautiful, a local artist. And preserving the foothills obviously is a big priority for Mayor McLean and the city council as well. I'm going to actually see if I can fix this, if that's all right.
So
can I step off set for just a minute?
For a little bit? Sure. Okay.
Because it's very hard to do my job without an earpiece.
And we are
so
waiting.
I'm just being completely transparent.
Right now. Okay. Kim's fixing her, what we call our IFB, which is just an earpiece. We are waiting for the president to come back across the tarmac from NIFC to where Air Force One is parked, and we will stay here on the air with you until the Air Force One departs from the Boise airport. That should be, well, about 10 minutes or so, the president will be coming back to Air Force One.